Hello everybody, my name is Duncan and welcome to the online version of this talk around digital parenting. I usually prefer to do this in person and have a nice Q&A afterwards because obviously everyone's situation is different and we can learn a lot from each other, but obviously we can't do this online. But please leave a comment below if you do have a question or something useful to share. My own children are now 18 and 16, so we've been through a lot of this with some success and some failures, as with most parenting challenges. What is the TLDR of this talk? So for anyone who doesn't know what TLDR means, it stands for too long didn't read. It's also known as the summary of the executive summary. And it means if you don't read or hear anything else in this document or presentation, this is the key message. And in this case, the TLDR is having a very good, solid relationship with your kids and being interested and involved in their lives, both online and in real life. That is the best way to reduce risk in this area. But you can also do everything right and stuff can still happen. It doesn't mean that you failed or messed up when stuff goes wrong, but being involved and present is a great start to reducing the risk and being able to handle it better when something does happen. And like most good parenting challenges, there is no quick fix or app that you can download that will solve it, unlike Apple's marketing campaign from a few years ago states. Every situation is unique, every family is different, every child is different, and the needs and risks vary dramatically as your child gets older and as technology changes. I'm going to go through stuff from younger children all the way through teens because everyone has a different situation, so please take what is applicable to you, and we'll have a Q&A afterwards to address more specific questions. Also, this talk is not supposed to scare anyone back to the Stone Age, but to make you aware of some of the dangers and help make good decisions based on knowledge and not FUD. FUD is another fun acronym for you. It stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And is a thing used to make people scared or wary of something maybe they don't fully understand. And hopefully this talk will help you tame the FUD a bit. The idea is to help you feel more informed, enabled, and willing to embrace technology and all the amazing benefits that come with it, instead of either being completely ignorant and putting your children at risk, or completely paranoid and not letting your children experience the wonders of technology. It can feel like we've almost evolved into a new species called techno-sapiens now, and this is not going to slow down. It's more critical than ever to learn about and understand this stuff, not just to protect our children, but to ensure that we stay relevant and employable in this rapidly changing world. My day job is head of cybersecurity at one of the biggest retail companies in South Africa, and so I work in this space daily. I'm very passionate about cybersecurity, and I'm responsible for a lot of the strategies and plans we put in place to make ourselves more secure as a company. Enterprise cybersecurity and personal cybersecurity are very closely linked, as well as family safety online. So a few of my passions overlap here, which is great. And technology and communication is incredible. We're the first generation who has been able to send a thought around the world at the speed of light. Our children have grown up in a world never having known anything other than always connected internet, video streaming, smartphones, and social media. With technology like Starlink, there's almost no way on earth now that we can't be fully connected anymore. And technology is changing so fast. When my 18-year-old son was born in 2007, which honestly just feels like the other day, the first iPhone had just been released and it didn't even have an app store yet or 3G. Android hadn't been released. Facebook was in its first year, and stuff like Starlink, iPads, WhatsApp, Instagram, Uber, Bitcoin, ChatGPT, decent electric cars, Kindles, none of those were even things yet. And many of these things had dramatically changed the world, and they didn't even exist when many of our children were born. I got my first phone when I was 22, and this was it. Pretty sweet. It's probably still works if I knew where it was. Those Nokias were pretty bulletproof. And the only app was Snake, which I played a ton of, but that was about it. And my PC looked a lot like this at the time. It had a 33 6K dial-up internet connection, and it was freaking cool. But only when I was a much older adult was I ever exposed to a constant connection with people, with social media, and many of the other amazing things that have become available that our children are now exposed to from a very young age. Also, the risks were so much lower. We weren't constantly bombarded with the latest fads and influences and fake lives being displayed to all. If you were really into that stuff, you could go and buy certain magazines or whatever. And even then, young girls were seeing these kind of touched up pictures of models in magazines and comparing themselves to these professionally staged images, but they weren't being constantly bombarded by it. When I was a kid, we generally had to leave the house to go and see bad stuff, the arcade or the video store, the cafe down the road. and now it's being constantly pumped directly into our homes. Preventing the accidental exposure of young children to content that is inappropriate is critical. DSTV has movie and series channels on all day, and they don't seem to have any regulations regarding what time 18 plus rated movies and series can be shown. A child at home during the day is very likely to witness some truly disturbing content if the correct controls aren't put in place. And if it's not DSTV, then maybe it's Netflix or Showmax or Amazon. The content is available, and unsuspecting children can accidentally see content that they can never unsee. Most children don't have their own phones, but very few parents don't let their kids use their phones from time to time to keep them entertained. And many computer and video games haven't been appropriate for children for a very long time, but I've spoken to a lot of adults who think they're just games. They can expose our children to horrific language, racism, all kinds of violence, drug use, pornographic material, prostitution, etc. User-generated content is getting bigger and bigger, and this is anything that is created and published by normal people that isn't produced by a studio or a company. YouTube is obviously the best example of this, but there are many others. More than 500 hours of video gets uploaded to YouTube every minute. So to help you understand that number a bit better, and for my brain this is how it works, but it would take somebody 82 years to watch all of the video that is uploaded to YouTube in one day. Isn't that amazing? And these kind of volumes highlight the challenge that this content presents. It's incredible and wonderful that anyone can share anything, and the amount of simply amazing stuff on YouTube is mind-blowing. The problem is that a huge amount of it is not appropriate for children, but unlike the stuff that's commercially produced, there's no review board or central authority we can trust to rate it. YouTube does have a restricted mode which blocks access to stuff that's been flagged by the community as really bad, but it's extremely inconsistent, and at the speed of upload, content could be available for months before it's flagged. Also, there's a huge difference between what is appropriate for a 16-year-old and for a 7-year-old, and obviously YouTube doesn't take this into account. Also, these YouTubers and influencers and people that the kids watch often make them aware of other services or dodgy sites or apps. So even if the video on YouTube is okay, often they might suggest other things that your kids might go and try, especially for pranks and things like that, which get pretty iffy sometimes. YouTube have actually done some really good work over the past 2 years or so and have added some really nice features to help this. They're not perfect, but they are a lot better than nothing. If you have a family account set up on YouTube, you can now invite your children to join the family and then choose if they're a teen, a preteen, or a young child, and set up certain controls and monitoring, which is great. The link to instructions on how to set this up is there, and the QR code will take you there too. These are some of the things that you can manage and some stuff YouTube does to help protect teens. They've also recently added an AI service which tries to tell the age of your child by the kind of videos they watch or how long the account has been active and some other signals. It's not perfect, of course, but all these little things add up to a better and safer experience. And YouTube isn't the only place user-generated content is big. Podcasts, games like Roblox, apps like TikTok, and services like Twitch, blogs, Instagram, Discord, X, Substack, anything that lets you share content of any kind that you've created is potentially dangerous, but also amazing at the same time. It's just important to know the services or apps your children use so you can be aware of the potential risks. Statistics show that the average age a child is exposed to pornography is 11. Average means obviously that half are exposed younger than that. When I was a kid, even getting hold of porn was different, and it was much tamer than it is today. Having the guts to look the cashier in the eye when buying a Playboy or a scope was quite a thing, so most people I knew didn't even try. And now it's available for free, and sometimes it's being sent directly into our homes and is incredibly damaging to young minds, and so we need to do our best to protect them. Obviously, they aren't always in our care or under our supervision, so it's very important to be open with your children about these dangers and have a no shame, no trouble policy for when they do come to you with stuff. The best way to avoid accidental exposure of young children to inappropriate content is by using parental controls. DSTV, Netflix, Showmax, Amazon, Apple TV Plus, they all support PIN-based parental controls, which work really well. You must just make sure your kid doesn't know the PIN. All modern video game consoles also support parental controls and have for years. The trick is that they don't come enabled out of the box. The days of handing your child a new PlayStation or Xbox and letting them go from there is long over. These are powerful computers connected to the internet, and we as parents need to understand this and set them up safely before giving them to our children. This includes phones, tablets, and computers. There are ways to dramatically improve the safety of these devices just by configuring them correctly. This applies to parents' devices too, if you let your child use yours. We need to get familiar with the devices in our home, and unfortunately sometimes this means we actually need to read the manual, which very few of us ever do. But there are many guides on YouTube as well to help with specific devices. And as your children get a little bit older, we need to protect them, but the threats do change a little bit. Older children and teenagers, and most adults actually, often don't understand the permanency of the internet, and that once something is on the internet, it is there forever and you have completely lost control of it. Encourage your older children to protect their digital CV. This is anything that a potential employer or girlfriend or boyfriend or that person's parents or whoever may be able to easily find online about you in the future. There are many stories of people not getting jobs or having relationship difficulties because of stuff that was found online about them from a long time ago. In 2020, a Miss South Africa contestant was forced to withdraw because of stuff she tweeted 7 years previously when she was 14. This is serious, and teens need to understand this. Once it's online, it is there forever. There are many stories of people losing opportunities because of stuff they posted many years ago, often as teenagers. I think most of us who grew up before the days of smartphones and social media are all quite relieved that most of the stupid stuff we did is lost, apart from in the memories of our mates. I think young people today have a very different set of rules to watch out for. COPA is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. This is an American law that requires companies collecting or processing information about children to protect this information very carefully and ensure that children and their information is safe. It's quite an onerous set of rules which apply to any data about children under the age of 13. This is why most social media services require you to be 13 in order to create an account. Meta, Google, etc. don't have to deal with the pain of complying with COPA, and they're American companies, so they do have to comply. It's not that they don't want children on their platform or because they are doing the right thing. It's because it's a pain for them to comply, and this is why we have this 13-year-old age limit. COPA only protects children physically in the USA, so it doesn't help us here, but it does at least stop companies collecting info about children that is under 13. But it's a bit of a toothless law and only requires the companies to ask the child how old they are. No additional validation is needed. So if the child or the parent who wants to create an account for their newborn just lies about their age, the companies are in the clear, which is pretty useless if you ask me. Children under the age of 16 and probably all the way into early 20s haven't yet developed enough to be able to handle the dopamine hit that likes and followers gives, which is exactly what these types of services are designed for, and it's causing a massive surge in depression, anxiety, social comparison, not understanding what is real and what is not, FOMO, lack of social and emotional development, etc. Even I get hooked on the like count when I post something on LinkedIn or wherever. It must be crazy for a still developing brain, and it is highly addictive. I think there are also probably a lot of other factors at play here too, and social media isn't the only reason for these surges, but it's definitely a part and probably a large part of the issue. What makes this a really tough parenting challenge is the fact that this has become such a significant part of a teenager's social system. A few parents trying to prevent their kids from accessing these services can backfire badly, as their children will feel left out, potentially ostracized, and this can be a very big deal for teens. This is something that needs to be done at a large scale, so our children don't have to pay a massive social price or feel so left out. The Smartphone Free Childhood organization is doing great work in this area and is doing it right by helping parents form groups who can work together to slow down the adoption of social media and other technology in children's lives without making them pay the huge social price. Go and have a look at their website if you haven't heard about them, but they really are doing great work. Australia has passed a new law banning certain social media platforms from allowing children under 16 to access them. This new law makes it the social media companies' problem to ensure that their customers are actually 16 and not just claiming that they are. So even if the children lie, the company is still responsible for breaking the law, which is very similar to like alcohol. And this is much better than COPA, and other countries are starting to follow Australia's lead in this, including France, Norway, and Sweden. This ban only comes into effect in Australia at the end of this year, so companies have time to figure out how exactly they validate age, and I fully support this in principle, but they need to get the age verification process right. The UK Online Safety Act recently came into effect after being introduced in 2023, requiring age verification for any site or service that allows adult content for people in the UK. This is not just for pornographic material, it's pretty much anything that could be considered harmful. While I agree with this in principle, I think it's an excellent goal. The way it's been implemented seems to leave a lot to be desired. It is easily bypassable with VPNs, fake IDs, even AI, and will push some people into underground alternative options, which are often much worse. And actually, this could pose quite a big threat to privacy on the internet as a whole, with overreaching censorship under this guise of protecting the children. This is a sensitive topic for me because it feels like they're taking one thing I care a lot about and using it to break another thing I care a lot about without actually fixing anything. This is not an easy problem to solve, but I don't think this attempt has been a very good or effective effort. I have a lot of my own opinions on these things, but that's not what this talk is about. There are also some extremely dangerous apps and websites out there that you need to look out for. Things like Omegle, Emerald, Monkey, Chat Roulette, Chat Random are all sites you can go to and have just video calls with random strangers, which for an introvert like me sounds like a cruel torture, but apparently it's very popular. Omegle and some others require sign up with an account, but something like Chat Random does not. You just open the site, click the button. Young children are being exposed to these sites and are seeing some horrific stuff and have been exposed to various body parts and, well, use your imagination. Young children are not generally searching these things out. They are often seeing them being used by YouTubers they watch who are showing these sites and often using them for pranks, which then the kids always want to emulate, and so they are also going onto them. AI and large language models are obviously changing the world rapidly. This is the biggest change to life and work as we know it since the internet itself. There's obviously a lot of hype, and the truth is that no one actually knows what the world is going to look like thanks to AI. But if you look back in history, we usually overestimate the short-term impact of things like these and severely underestimate the long-term sort of 10 to 15 years effect. But however you look at it, this is affecting our children's lives already, and so we need to ensure that we understand the amazing benefits this brings, as well as how these AI tools are being used in less than helpful ways. I'm not talking about your kids just using ChatGPT to do their homework or anything, but more around AI chatbots. Apps like Character AI lets you talk to a chatbot that has been specifically set up to mimic a famous character or something, which can be pretty cool. I could see how this could be very educational and interesting. Unfortunately, there are some dodgy ones, and in December last year, 2 families filed lawsuits against Character AI, alleging that the platform had encouraged self-harm and exposed children to some inappropriate content. Another particularly troubling case involved a teen with autism, whose parents claimed that the AI suggested that it would be understandable for him to harm his parents over these unreasonable screen time restrictions. But this isn't the worst. There are other public AI services that are completely free and have been created to be into very specific things. Here are some examples of the chatbots our children could very easily come across. Some of these are very kinky, and even the well-controlled AI services are very sycophantic, which means that they'll tell you what you want to hear and make you feel good, kind of like a yes man. ChatGPT and others do this. So when you cross that with a kinky fetish and some highly customized personas, and a 14-year-old boy finds that, well, you can imagine. Grok, which is Elon Musk's AI service, recently launched companions. These are completely free, and Annie is this very sexy and flirtatious companion who was completely open, but they have recently added at least an age confirmation. But as long as you can do very basic maths and figure out which year an 18-year-old was born, you're good to go. This report, which came out on kids and AI chatbots, which was built on surveys and interviews of about 1,000 children and about 2,000 parents in the UK, showed some very scary stats. 23% have sought advice from AI chatbots. 35% say it feels like they're talking to a friend, and that's higher amongst vulnerable children. 12% talk to AI chatbots because they have no one else, and that's also much higher amongst vulnerable kids. And 40% have no concern about following chatbot advice. And this is alarming because there are no guardrails that are tailored for children. Adult supervision is extremely rare or non-existent in many cases. Kids can't often spot bad advice or manipulation, and vulnerable kids are most likely to form these unhealthy relationships with AI bots. I think the real danger here can be loneliness and kids filling gaps with AI, which isn't going to end well. There are already plenty of adults in the world who have fallen in love with AIs, and for kids this could be very dangerous to social development. I do need to mention one quick caution about some other LLMs. Most of the big ones like ChatGPT, etc. are very restricted as far as what they can help you with, and anything that's illegal or dangerous is usually blocked. There are, however, a few that are not. services like Venice AI is an open, fully uncensored AI model that will help you with anything you might want to learn about, like how to make bombs or crystal meth. It also has characters which allow you to talk to or design your own, all completely free, and it's very privacy focused, so no logins are needed. Just watch out for these if your children do find them. There is a very cool guide from the United Nations International Crime and Justice Unit. It provides a lot of really good guidance on how to teach kids about responsible AI usage, and it is really good. The link for the QR code is there on the page. So moving on from AI, onto sexting. So sexting is the practice of sending racy messages of yourself to someone else. And for dads, obviously this is terrifying. Having a shotgun by the front door for boys coming no longer helps. They don't even have to be in the same country to get up to no good. And obviously someone else having photos of you is extremely dangerous, because once they're online, you don't control them anymore. And we'll talk about the legal implications of this shortly. And secret apps. Teenagers have been finding enterprising ways of hiding things from their parents since time began, but there are apps that assist them in hiding activities on their phones from parents or other prying eyes. They might look like a calculator app, but if you type in a code and you press %, they open up into a video store or a messaging app, and these are specifically designed to hide activities like cyberbullying and sexting from parents, and you need to watch out for them. If your child has multiple calculator apps and they aren't exactly budding maths professors, this might point to something to look out for. And Apple has made this much harder with recent versions of iOS, giving kids the options to hide apps and require Face ID before they even become visible. I understand these types of things are very useful for journalists or for people traveling to hostile countries, but please, they are making our lives as parents a lot harder. Cyberbullying is a really big deal and is responsible for the misery, depression, and sometimes suicide of millions of teenagers and preteens all over the world. Cyberbullying is the practice of using technology and the internet to bully, belittle, or harass someone else. It is incredibly damaging to young people. When I was at school, if you were bullied, it generally stayed at school, and you were safe if you stayed away from those kids or you went home or hung out with your friends. If someone did do something to you, it was seen by a relatively small number of people and would often fade as they found something else to laugh about. And in extreme cases, moving to a new school would usually sort it out, and now it is everywhere and it spreads like wildfire. The permanency of the internet makes it extremely hard to get away from, even by moving to a new country. I really feel for teenagers who are victims of this. It is horrific. There are a lot of really good resources online for anyone dealing with this. So if you are aware of your child either partaking in or being a victim of it, please have a look at what you can do. It can be tough for parents because I think some parents have this misguided notion that our kids don't need our help, or that they know everything about technology, or certainly much more than we do. This technological or online/virtual world is no different from the real one. When your kids are young, you hold their hand and you walk to the park with them and you watch them and you help them while they play. And as they get a bit older and you've seen that they're okay on the slide by themselves, you give them a bit more freedom. It's not a question of knowing how to walk. Your kids knew how to walk long before you let them walk to school by themselves, but there was a responsible adult taking care of them. And even though their walking skills were quite good, knowing how to do something is one thing, but knowing how to take care of yourself is something completely different. You probably wouldn't let your grade 1 child walk to school all by themselves unless you lived right across the road from school, but many of us throw devices and the internet at our children and we expect them to stay safe just because they're good with tech. There is a lot of evidence also of parents that are quite overprotective of their children in the physical world, especially as they get a bit older, but very underprotective in the virtual world. We need to correct this quite quickly. The danger is that we end up with adults who've never been put in tough situations or had to figure out some conflict thing on the playground because adults step in too quickly, or who have never gotten lost, which is a horrible thing, but it can be a major learning and growth opportunity. But then they're exposed to all these terrible things online, which really causes a lot of damage. The pedophiles and the shady places we don't want our children going to are mostly online now anyways, and so we could probably be relaxed a little bit in the physical world. Obviously in South Africa, physical crime still is a massive issue, but this is something to think about, and maybe just make sure you're balancing this correctly in your situation. Sextortion has been happening for a long time, but it really does seem to have exploded in the past few years. In the past, a predator who wanted pictures of children would usually meet them online and then slowly build trust to where they would sort of convince the child to send a nude or some other compromising photo or video to them, often promising to send one back as a show of trust. The predator would then use this one and threaten them that they would send it to their parents or to their school friends or whoever, unless they send more pictures, which obviously just made the problem much worse. I helped with a big case of this in 2017, and it was horrendous, and this creep was doing it to more than 60 kids, mostly teenage boys. Sexual predators are still doing this a lot, but most of the cases I see now are financially motivated. Criminals have seen this as just another way to blackmail people for money. And this often begins on social media platforms like Snapchat or gaming chats or Instagram, WhatsApp or whatever. But there are other ways too. And these criminals are very good at this, and they build up trust over a period of time. And this is happening to both boys and girls, but boys are targeted more because they're often less likely to talk to parents and teachers about this, and predators know this. They're mostly teens, but kids as young as 8 have had this done to them, and plenty of adults are also getting caught by this. No one is immune. Even very careful children you think may be way too smart to fall for this are getting stuck. They've been caught by expert con men, and it could happen to anyone. These guys are master manipulators who create fake profiles specifically designed to appeal to the victim, and they are extremely hard to spot. They like the same music, the same sports, they'll pick up on any issues they may be having with their friends or their parents, and they'll use this to build trust with the victim. And it turns dark very quickly though, and then they'll use the fear of getting into trouble with their parents or the police if they ever report this to keep it going. This is terrifying, and many cases have led to suicide. I encourage you to have a look at the noescaperoom.org page or website. It's an interactive video that you can watch with your teenage children to watch, get these teenage children to watch too, and it just shows how easy it is to get sucked into this and some of the terrible side effects that it can have. There is a link to that site at the bottom there. And here are some of the common warning signs that your child may be stuck in this type of situation. Now, many of these things could just be a normal day for a teenager, but when things get to the next level, or they seem extra withdrawn, or you notice anything really strange happening with money, or they're extra secretive about it, that might be something to look into. And obviously prevention is better than cure. And please tell your children never to share revealing photos with someone ever. But if you absolutely have to, please make sure you really know them in real life and that you're sure it's really them that you're sending the photos to. If something does happen, like any crisis, staying calm is the trick. This is not the time to remind them how dumb it is to share photos or anything. Just help. Obviously, don't ever pay or negotiate with a blackmailer. Take screenshots or photos of the screen with another phone and then block the account. Don't report it on WhatsApp. When you report accounts on WhatsApp in particular, the whole chat often gets deleted and evidence is lost. So rather just block it. And there are several resources that can help, including police, schools, Childline, etc. And Take It Down is a service that generates a unique digital fingerprint of the content. It doesn't make a copy or anything. And then it adds this digital fingerprint to their database, which many services use to identify content. So if the photo appears on a service and the signature matches on Take It Down, that service can then take action to prevent the content from spreading or being shared. It's not foolproof, but it certainly helps. Schools have been moving to use iPads and Chromebooks over the past few years, and I'm all for it, but wow, it has made our lives as parents a little bit harder. Many of us are using sort of parental controls, or we restrict browsing or times when the devices can be used, but these school devices are much harder for us as parents to manage. They are well managed at school, but often with a very specific goal, and then they get quite open when they come home, and we as parents don't have the tools to manage them effectively. I know there are parent portals for Jamf or whatever else we might be using, but they are generally pretty basic and inadequate. We've struggled with this device more than any others by a long way, and I know we're not alone. I do think that the education department and the Edtech initiative need to allow parents a bit more control here. Hopefully we'll get there soon. I know people are working on it. I just want to touch very quickly on some of the South African legal things you need to be aware of. This will be very quick, and these are more just to make you aware of, because sometimes our children do stupid stuff. Teenagers don't always make the best decisions. I'm sure we all remember something we did that was really dumb, but doing dumb stuff online can get you into a lot of trouble. I'm not a lawyer, so if your child does get into any legal hot water, I certainly can't help you. But I do know people who can. But knowing some of this stuff may help your education efforts a little bit. There are two main areas of law, civil and criminal. So civil is between people or companies, like you hurt me or you broke our agreement or our contract or whatever, and usually results in someone taking someone else to court. These issues are usually resolved by someone being told to pay the other person damages or some other compensatory measure. The minimum age that someone can sue or be sued in South Africa is 7. They will need the support of their parents if they're under 18, but 7 gives you civil capacity. Criminal law, this is against the state and usually comes about by actually breaking the law, and this can result in fines, arrest, or a criminal record. The minimum age someone can be arrested in South Africa is 12. You are deemed to have criminal capacity from 12 years old. This is basically defined as, so can I do something? Can I understand the consequences of my actions, and should I know the difference? Below 14, they'll often look at the circumstances of the situation and may not fully enforce the law, but from 14, you have full criminal capacity. Another important thing to understand when it comes to cyberbullying or sharing or revealing photos is the doctrine of chain of publication and common purpose. When it comes to laws like defamation, which is making claims against somebody or false claims against somebody to harm their reputation, or crimen injuria, which is seriously insulting or hurting the dignity of someone else, both of which are often used in cyberbullying or sharing of nude photo cases, it's not just the person who posted the comment or the message who can be in trouble. This concept comes from the days of newspapers, where if an article was published that was false or made a defamatory claim against someone, it wasn't only the person who wrote the piece who was in trouble. Anyone who along the way from submission to publication could have stopped it from being published is also in trouble. This includes the editor, anyone who reviewed it before printing, even the printing house themselves in some cases. If we bring that forward now into a WhatsApp chat group, for example, the person who posted the comment or the picture is obviously in trouble, but also anyone who shared it, forwarded it, or reposted it. Even anyone who reacted or commented in an encouraging way could be in trouble. It even includes anyone who remained silent, but were in a position of influence or responsibility and could have intervened, like the group admin in a school setting, or a teacher or a prefect who may have been on that group and should have done something to stop it. The common purpose doctrine means that all participants in a group can be held criminally liable for a crime committed by one of them if they shared a common intent to commit the crime, or they actively associated themselves with the conduct, even if they actually didn't physically do the harmful act themselves. So this is for when a group of people vandalizes something or assaults someone. Even if only one person in the group actually did it, the group are all guilty through common intent. This applies to group chats as well. These are very important concepts that I don't think a lot of people fully understand. And finally, CSAM, or child sexual abuse material, is still called child pornography in South Africa, and it is any nude picture or image of a minor. It doesn't matter if the minor took the photo themselves or if it was with consent. It also includes any images depicting sexual acts with a minor, or even a visual representation that sexualizes a minor. And the law is very clear with this. There is never any legal defense for having it or distributing CSAM. You may not create it, you may not share it, forward it, store it, or ask someone for it, ever. This gets around the dodgy pedophiles saying that they're a doctor or they're studying something and they need this picture for some reason. There is never any defense for this. And the real risk here is teens sending news to each other, which is obviously a massive thing. If someone receives a nude picture of a minor, that is against the law and they can get into a lot of trouble. So what can you do about this? Because it's pretty scary, right? So firstly, I think it's very important not to stick your head in the sand or just sort of forget about this stuff. You need to engage and show interest and realize the dangers and risks. Try and keep up as best you can, which is very difficult. Even for me, who works with this stuff day in and day out. It changes so fast, but this is the challenge we as parents face in this time. Communication is critical, and keep the relationship as strong as you can. The better the relationship, the better your chances of getting through this. Ask for help if you need it. There are lots of resources online. Google is your friend here. Get hold of me or someone else you know who can help with the technology, or go to a professional if needed. One of the best things that you can do is work on a technology contract with your children. Work on this together and don't just dictate the terms or the consequences. Make sure they know why each item is in the contract and agree on the consequences of breach together. And yes, now you know that the legal age to enter a contract is 18, but with parents involvement, they do have civil capacity from 7. So there you go. Hashtag not legal advice, obviously. But this is the one I wrote for my children and we use. Don't worry about reading it. There'll be a link coming up now. We went through these with both of my children and we used it to talk about some of the stuff that can be a little bit difficult or awkward to bring up out of the blue. They did have a lot of questions. We did not dictate the terms and we allowed them to suggest changes or amendments that they would like to make, but these have worked really well. Here is the link and the QR code to the social media contract that I just showed, as well as ones for phones and devices. They're in Google Drive. Just download them or make a copy in your own Google Drive and then edit and customize them to fit your needs and your family. It's a great way to have this critical conversation with them. People often tell me also that their kids already have phones and have had full access to everything. So trying to clamp down now is not going to be easy. And unfortunately, no, it's not. But it's never too late. Just because that ship has sailed doesn't mean you can't fix it. The sea will be much rockier, so expect some resistance for sure. But it's always best to do it early, but it is never too late. We can and we should build technology fences and guardrails like parental controls to help and use them as much as possible to protect our children, especially when they're young. But it's important to understand they're just guardrails designed to prevent accidental exposure or at least reduce the chances of going over the edge. But they're not walls. Communication and good parenting is the long-term answer. We cannot rely purely on a technology solution to keep them safe all the way through. Your house and your devices might be well set up and safe, but especially older children and teens will find ways around these barriers, even as simple as just going to a friend's house whose parents maybe haven't taken as much care. So the best way to keep our children safe in this area is with multiple layers, because just one or two of these won't work alone. Protect Young Eyes, who have some great resources, put this together. I tweaked a few things, but this is a great way of showing it. The first and most important one, as I've mentioned multiple times already, is just good, involved parenting. This is no different from drugs or alcohol or whatever. Trust, good communication, involvement in their lives, taking interest in what they're interested in, showing up, being present, all of these things that we should be doing irrespective of this is the best defense in a long way. By a long way. A good barometer of this and how well it's working is if they come to you when they've seen something that they know that they probably shouldn't have. Being there for them and making sure they know that they won't be in trouble really does work wonders. And then we get to what we can do to protect them while they're in your home. And this means making sure that you have a content filter on your internet line, etc. We've been using Cloudflare for families for many years, and it works great and it's free. There's another one called Family Shield. Now, there are a few others as well, but these are free and there are instructions on how to set them up on the website. As I've said before, we've been using them for a long time and they really do work well. Next, we come to devices. This includes things like DSTV or Netflix or PlayStation or Xbox, phones, tablets, computers. There are lots of options here depending on your specific situation. I always recommend using what's built in and free first and only paying for additional stuff if you need to. Consoles all have pretty decent parental controls, so make sure you use them. Apple Screen Time and Google Family Link are two built-in free services for Apple and Android devices that allow you to control screen time, apps, get reports, etc. They work reasonably well and don't cost anything, but they do need to be set up. There are lots of guides online teaching you how to configure and managing these things properly. We've used Screen Time since my kids were much younger with their iPads, and also once they got their own phones too. These free services are far from perfect and they are definitely workaroundable, but they do help and they may be enough for some families. If these built-in apps are not enough, there are many other ones available with a huge range of capabilities and prices. In my experience, these are only really needed if you are not happy with the built-in ones, but there are some serious caveats here. Apple in particular has made using these apps really hard. They have made a lot of privacy-related enhancements to iOS, over the past few years, which I fully support. But many of these have completely broken or seriously nerfed these parental control apps. Use them if you need them. Make sure you get a free trial first to test how well they work before paying any money. Then location. Stay public. When our children were younger, we allowed YouTube only on the TV in the lounge. so that we could just be aware of what was being watched, even if we weren't actively paying attention. Also, then when they got a little bit older, they would almost self-censor a little bit when the language got rough. They would kind of skip the video on their own, which they probably wouldn't have if it wasn't in a public place. When it comes to devices, we try and avoid the toxic trio: darkness, bedrooms, and boredom. These are breeding ground for all kinds of issues. Devices in bedrooms at night are a classic example of this. The best advice here is to not allow devices in bedrooms at night. We have had a very strict all devices on charge in the kitchen by 9:30 rule for most of our children's lives, and it's worked well. We've had issues, mostly with the school iPad, but generally it's been good and worked well. Make sure things like this are in your device contract. Then lastly, we get to app controls, like what you can set up in TikTok or Instagram or Discord or Snapchat. These are usually pretty weak, but they are improving over time. Mostly, the challenge is that often what we as parents want doesn't really fit into their business model, and so they often do the minimum, which is why I wouldn't rely on any of them as my only protection without the other layers in place. But having the full pyramid in place really does give you the best chance of getting through this. It's also important to know that even if you do everything right, stuff will still happen. It's not a failing on your side or your child's. This is the world, unfortunately, that we live in now, and we just need to be aware and do what we can and love them. Here are some books that I found interesting. So The Anxious Generation talks a lot about the impact of growing up with a phone-based childhood and the impact that it has had on people and how many problems it has caused, and also how a lack of outside play and of parents often overprotecting in the physical world and underprotecting in the virtual world has caused significant spikes in depression rates, anxiety, self-harm, suicide, etc. I don't agree with all of it, but on the whole, it is excellent, and it has certainly made me think a lot about a lot of these issues. How Not to Mess Up Online is Emma Sadler's new book. It's an update to a previous one that I recommended called Selfies, Sex and Smartphones. Some video stuff if you don't like reading. So Sextortion is a documentary that came out after a girl committed suicide in 2013, and it turned out to be because she had been mercilessly sextorted by this guy who was also doing the same thing to many others. This is the story of how they caught him and some of the effects it had on other victims. It's on Apple Movies and probably Google for about 30 Rand to rent. And Adolescence, it's on Netflix. It's an excellent series that explores a lot of these topics, specifically what can happen when children are left alone with the toxic trio I mentioned earlier. It's a tough watch, especially if you're a parent, and obviously it's an extreme case, but it is really good. This brilliant documentary came out a few years ago called Childhood 2.0, and it's available on YouTube. I highly recommend it. It goes into many of the things I've spoken about today, and gives you many real-world examples and perspectives from teenagers and counselors and experts in this field. It isn't formally rated, but I suggest not watching it with your children if they're under sort of 14 or 15 or so. It's definitely aimed at parents. It's a 90 minutes long, but it's well worth your time, and they give some really good tips and advice near the end too. Those, along with a lot of the various links and stuff I've mentioned before, you can use to really help you get through a lot of this stuff. So that is a very high level view of some of the risks facing our children and what we've done and what has worked well. Obviously, every family situation is different. We're all in this together, and if we do it together and agree on things like when we give our children phones and access to social media, then there is much less of a social penalty for those who don't want their children to be on these things before a certain age, like the smartphone-free childhood pledge suggests. I recommend you go and have a look at them. Thank you very much.